Hello and welcome to another brief tutorial discussing Pearson Access Next training site. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at how we pick our testing sessions. Okay, so in the last video, we just learned how to log in. Now we've logged in, what do we do now? We're going to look for that big testing icon in the center of your screen, and you're going to click the drop-down menu and click Sessions. At this point, there's a number of different ways to find our session. The easiest way to do this is to click on the field that says Name Starts With, and we're going to type in the name of your testing session, which is generally your name. So for example, if I were Mr. Demons, I'm going to simply type in Demons, click Search, and here you're going to find there are two testing sessions for Mr. Demons and his students. There's an ELA assessment and also a math assessment. So just for demonstration purposes, we're going to click on the box next to Demons ELA, and then we're going to click on the white hyperlink that says Go to Students in Sessions. Okay, now on the left-hand side, I'm going to click on Mr. Demons' name, and this gives us access to his class. Okay, if you notice, we now have the green Start menu, which will start his test, and the Downloads Resource button, which will give us access to student testing tickets. These are primarily going to be printed for you, but just in case you needed access to them, that's where you would find that. Now, if you scroll down, here would be the list of your actual students. In this instance, we have generic students generated, but during the real park test, the students' names would be evident here. And on the right-hand side, you would see the actual units that were being tested. This is slightly different than what we saw on the park test last year. Just to give you an example of the different look of a test once it has been started, I'm going to click on Test 3 ELA. This is a practice test that I've already begun. If you notice, there are 3 units to this assessment, and the first unit has already been unlocked. Unlike last year, where we had seal codes, in order for students to access the test itself would have to be unlocked. This makes it possible for a student to access the test without having to use a seal code. Now I'm going to scroll down just so you can see. Unit 1 has been unlocked, and if you notice, this student hasn't started the assessment yet. It says ready, and there's no lock here. If we look at Unit 2, you'll see that there's a lock next to the ready button, which would make it impossible for that student to start that test. Okay, I'm going to scroll back to the top. So initially, once we start our test, it's going to look like this with all 3 or 4 units or 2 units locked, and now we have to start our assessment for the day. So we're going to unlock that test for the day, and now students have access to it. Now if you notice in the color coding here, we have 1 gray student, 1 yellow student, 1 red student, which means the gray student hasn't begun the assessment yet. In all likelihood, during this test, that student did not show up and therefore did not start the unit. The yellow student, that student has been resumed because at some point the student exited the test for whatever reason, and now you had to resume that student. And the student to the right is in red because they exited the test. Now I wanted to show you this because in the event that a student exits the test during the test, for whatever reason, if there was an emergency or if there was technical difficulty and the student exited the test, if you need to resume the student, all you would have to do is click on the arrow next to the word exited and drop down to resume. When you drop down to the resume menu, click resume, what you notice is now the student has been resumed. The student can now log in and continue their test. To give you just another example, in another class, a student completed their test. Okay, not only exited, but submitted their test for grading. And if you notice now, their color code is blue. So during testing, your students are either going to be gray, yellow, red, blue, and if they're actively taking the test, they would be green. And in this instance, I don't have any students actively testing. Okay, so this is how you would manage your class once you've accessed your sessions. At the end of the assessment for each unit, you're going to want to make sure that your students are all marked in blue, meaning you don't have any students in red or in green when the unit concludes. Now, in the instance that there's an emergency and a student had to exit without completing their test, obviously that student would be in red. And if any student did not show up that day and did not partake in the assessment, then that student would be gray. Under normal circumstances, you want every single student to be marked in blue at the end of each unit assessment. Well, that concludes this short tutorial on students and sessions and managing your sessions in Pearson Access Next training site.